For 847 years, the messages from the small blue planet called Earth arrived like clockwork. They were whispers in the cosmic dark, desperate pleas for help from a young species facing a dying sun. And for 847 years, the Galactic Concord, in its infinite wisdom, debated. They formed committees. They commissioned studies. They argued over procedure. Finally, they decided to act. They assembled a grand fleet of friendship, ready to welcome the primitives into their enlightened galactic community. They were 8 centuries too late. When the galaxy's most powerful civilization arrives at a silent, empty Earth, what shocking message will they find waiting for them? What impossible equation, left on a simple whiteboard, will shatter their understanding of physics and their own place in the universe? And what happens when the Concord realizes that the species they abandoned has not just survived, but has left them a final, terrifying ultimatum, with a countdown that began centuries ago? The Council spoke too late. Humanity was already gone. Before our story begins, your support helps us broadcast these chronicles across the void. Take a moment to subscribe and like this video, and let the galaxy know that you are listening. Alright, let's begin the story, then. High Emissary Lyra of the Crystalline Sovereignty stood at the observation window of her flagship, the Stellara. Her multifaceted form shimmered as she watched the blue and white marble of Earth grow larger with each passing moment. Her forearms were crossed in a gesture of serene curiosity. She wondered what kind of reception the humans would give them. After 847 years of silence, the Galactic Concord had finally decided to answer their call, finally agreed to send a delegation, finally stopped debating and started acting. Perhaps we should have moved faster, she thought, a rare flicker of doubt in her ancient consciousness. But galactic bureaucracy, a machine of 12 distinct elder species, moved at its own glacial, deliberate pace. Now, they were here to make things right, to offer humanity the friendship they had requested so long ago, to welcome them into the galactic community at last. The fleet consisted of 17 vessels, each a masterpiece of engineering from a different member species of the Concord. They carried diplomats, scientists, cultural experts, and trade negotiators, all prepared for the long, complex process of integrating a primitive species into a civilization that spanned 40,000 worlds. Lyra had studied the human broadcasts carefully, the ones that had grown more desperate with each passing century. She had learned their primary languages, understood their social customs, prepared herself for negotiations that would surely take years. High Emissary, the comms officer, a blob-like Zix-Gore named Zix, turned several of its eye stalks toward her. I am receiving no response from Earth. No acknowledgement of our hails. No greeting. No challenge. Not even a simple automated reply. This was strange. The human broadcasts had been so frequent, so insistent, so desperate for contact. Now, there was only silence. A vast, empty silence that filled the space where desperate voices should have been. Lyra felt the first stirring of unease in her primary core, the part of her crystalline structure that processed intuition rather than logic. They entered a high, stable orbit. The fleet's powerful sensors began their work, sweeping across the surface of the planet, searching for the massive cities the broadcasts had shown, looking for the billions of humans that should be there, hunting for any sign of the civilization that had reached out to the stars and begged for help. The first readings made no sense. The cities are there, Zix reported, its eye stalks swiveling in confusion. Structures are intact. Power grids are functional. But they are empty. Completely and utterly empty. I am reading not a single human life sign anywhere on the surface. Lyra stared at the images flooding her screen. The forests had grown into the streets. Green vines climbed the sides of silent skyscrapers. Herds of four-legged animals grazed in what were once city parks. Nature was reclaiming what humans had built. She ordered landing parties to 3 locations, the largest human cities according to their records, places called New York, Tokyo, and London. She went down herself to the place humans had called their United Nations, where they had recorded so many of their hopeful broadcasts to the stars. The building stood pristine. It was maintained by a legion of silent, cleaning robots that still polished the floors and watered the plants in the grand lobby. Machines that continued their programmed tasks despite the complete absence of any humans to appreciate their work. In the main assembly hall, A single holographic display played on a continuous loop. It showed a human male, his hair gray, his eyes tired but filled with a fierce, unwavering determination. "My name is Dr. Eris Thorne," the hologram said, his voice echoing in the empty hall. "I am the former director of the International Space Authority. If you are watching this, then you have finally arrived." The hologram looked directly into the landing party's sensors, as if Thorne himself were standing there, staring across the centuries. "For 800 years, humanity asked for help. We sent our messages into the void, telling you of our dying sun, begging for the technology to save our world. We waited. We hoped. We prayed for an answer." He sighed, a profoundly human sound of deep weariness. The Concord debated. It formed committees. It discussed the human question for 8 centuries while our world burned. We realized, too late, that no help was coming, that we were alone, that we would have to save ourselves or die waiting for a civilization that would never arrive in time. The message continued. Thorne explained that humanity had solved its own problem, that they had found their own way to survive, that they had discovered something the Concord, in all its ancient wisdom, had never imagined possible. "And so we are leaving," the hologram said. "All of us. Every last human. We are abandoning Earth, but we are taking our knowledge with us. We are going somewhere the Concord will never find us. Somewhere we can build a future without waiting for permission." He smiled, a bitter, sad expression. "Thank you, Galactic Concord. Thank you for teaching us the most important lesson of all. That waiting for others to save you is the same as giving up. That hope without action is just another word for surrender. And humans, we have never been good at surrendering." The hologram flickered. Thorne leaned forward, his final words spoken slowly, with the weight of a dying world behind them. "Do not look for us. Do not waste your time searching. Humanity is already gone. We have been gone for centuries. We leave behind only these empty cities, our automated servants, and this one final message." He paused. "I hope that someday you might learn to move faster, to help those who ask before it is too late, to remember that while you debate, entire civilizations can rise and fall, can live and die, can lose all hope, and find new paths on their own." With those words, the hologram ended and began again from the beginning. An endless loop of humanity's quiet, devastating farewell. Lyra stood frozen, her crystalline form pulsing with a color she had never experienced before. It was a mixture of awe, horror, and a profound, galaxy-spanning shame. She thought about the 847 years of debate, the countless committees, the endless discussion about whether humanity was ready, whether their violent history made them too dangerous. And all that time, the humans had been waiting, hoping, and finally working. The other landing parties reported the same findings. Empty cities on the moon, abandoned, silent colonies on Mars, vacant stations orbiting Jupiter and Saturn. Every human settlement left behind. And the automated systems maintained everything, as if their creators might return at any moment. Zix's analysis of the human databases was even more chilling. Every piece of advanced human technology had been systematically erased, every schematic deleted, every blueprint destroyed. They had left behind only basic information, enough to prove they had existed, but not enough to explain how they had escaped. Lyra returned to her ship and called an emergency meeting of all the ambassadors. They gathered in the conference chamber, 12 different species, trying to comprehend the impossible. The question that haunted all of them was simple and terrible. Where had humanity gone? And more importantly, what had they become in the centuries since they left? Xenoarchaeologist Kalen of the Xyler had spent 300 years study dead civilizations. He thought he had seen every possible way a species could end. War, famine, plague, self-annihilation. But he had never seen anything like this. Civilizations did not simply leave. They didn't pack up everything and everyone and disappear into nothing. Yet, that was exactly what humanity had done. And the equation on the whiteboard might explain how. The board had been found in a quantum research facility on Earth, preserved perfectly by a stasis field. It was complex, filled with symbols for dimensional mathematics and quantum topology, theories the Concord had studied for 50,000 years without ever making practical. And yet here it was, written in simple chalk, by someone named Dr. Eva Rostova. an equation that described something the Concorde considered impossible. A way to fold space not just locally, but dimensionally. A way to step outside the known universe and into somewhere else. Kalin copied the equation and sent it to the Concorde's top physicists. 3 days later, they confirmed what he suspected. The equation was real. It worked, in theory. With enough energy and computational power, it could open a doorway to another reality. But the energy requirements were staggering. The computational complexity was beyond anything the Concorde could currently manage. Yet, humanity had somehow done it. 800 years ago, the investigation continued. On Proxima Centauri b, they found a colony that had housed 400,000 humans. It had been evacuated in less than 6 hours. In the colony's central square, another message was found. This one was from a military officer, Captain Gregory Stone. His recorded voice was full of barely controlled anger. He spoke of how humanity had applied for Concorde membership 400 years earlier. How the Concorde had responded by forming a subcommittee to study the application, which formed another subcommittee, which requested more information, which debated for 2 centuries before voting to delay the decision for another 200 years. We did not have 200 years, the hologram of Captain Stone said, his jaw set. Our sun was dying. We needed help then. While you talked, we died. The recording showed Stone turning to point at a massive, strange ship being constructed in orbit. It looked nothing like Concorde designs. So we stopped waiting, Stone said. We stopped begging. And we saved ourselves. We are going somewhere better. Somewhere far beyond the reach of aliens who think debate is more important than action. The truth was even worse. The Concorde's chief intelligence officer, after months of work, finally broke the encryption on the sealed historical archives. The files that required special clearance. The files that told the truth. Humanity's first contact request had been denied. Not because they weren't ready, but because they were deemed too dangerous, too aggressive, too quick to develop new technologies. The vote, taken in secret centuries ago, had been to quarantine humanity in their home system, to contain them until they either destroyed themselves or became more controllable. The files showed centuries of secret surveillance. Concorde ships watching Earth from a distance. And the reports all said the same thing. Humans advanced too quickly. They went from primitive radio to quantum computers in less than 2 centuries. A pace that terrified the stagnant, ancient Concorde. The Council had not been debating whether to help humanity. They had been debating how to keep them caged. And humanity had known. In a hidden cache on Europa, they found the personal logs of an engineer named Raymond Clark. His logs, protected by encryption that took months to break, detailed humanity's unification. The moment when every human nation had set aside its differences to work toward a single goal, survival. Clark's log showed that humanity had known about the Concorde's surveillance. They had detected the watching ships. And instead of being angry, they had been calculating. They had used the surveillance as a cover. We will show them what they want to see, Clark had written. We will make them believe we are primitive, struggling, and harmless. And while they watch our failures, we will build our success in the dark. The deception had been perfect, complete, sustained for generations. They published research papers with deliberate errors. They staged public failures of experiments that had actually succeeded. The why made humanity look like a species struggling with basic space flight, while secretly, in the outer solar system, they were building the fleet that would carry them to another universe. In the deep void beyond the Kuiper Belt, a Concorde scout ship found the Ghost Fleet. Thousands of ships, arranged in perfect, silent formation. Colony ships, massive carriers, transport vessels. Each one stripped of its essential systems. Empty hulls, floating in the dark. The engineering analysis was terrifying. The drives that had powered these ships were missing. But the mounting points, the power conduits, they were for a technology the Concorde had never seen. A technology that left no radiation trace, no subspace wake. A technology they could not even begin to understand. This failure was more frightening than anything else. It proved just how far ahead humanity had gone. High Emissary Lyra presented all the evidence to an emergency assembly of the Concorde. The empty Earth, the impossible equation, the secret vote to quarantine, the grand deception, the Ghost Fleet. The chamber sat in stunned, shamed silence. We did not simply miss a call for help, Lyra said, her crystalline form pulsing with a deep, sorrowful light. We deliberately and arrogantly ignored a species of profound genius because we were afraid. We tried to put them in a cage. And in response, they didn't declare war. They didn't protest. They simply built a new universe for themselves and walked away. But the investigation had uncovered one final, encrypted file on Earth. The deepest archive. A file labeled simply, Testament. A xenolinguist named Patricia Young had finally cracked it. She played it for the assembly. The image of Dr. Eris Thorne appeared again. But this recording was different. It was longer, more detailed. It was meant for them, for the people who would find it after the full, shameful truth had been revealed. If you are watching this, Thorne began, his voice calm, then you have finally understood the magnitude of your failure. He explained everything. How humanity knew they were being watched. How they had orchestrated the deception. How they had listened to every Concord session for 300 years, intercepting their communications, studying their politics, their fears, their arrogance. We have the records, Thorne said, as lists of names and voting records scrolled across the screen. We remember who spoke for us. And we remember who spoke for our cage. He then explained dimensional transcendence in simple terms. A new universe, where the laws of physics could be shaped by those who understood them. A place where a civilization could grow without limits, without restrictions, without old empires telling them to wait their turn. Then came the message. The real reason for the recording. We have left something behind, Thorne said, his expression turning serious. A beacon, a dimensional marker. It is programmed to activate in exactly 1,000 years from the day of our exodus. When it activates, it will create a bridge, a stable gateway between your universe and ours. He leaned forward. You have 153 of your years left. That is how long we calculated it would take you to find this message. In that time, we will be watching, not with ships, but through the gravitational echoes and quantum ripples that cross dimensional barriers. We will see what you become. The ultimatum was delivered not with anger, but with the cold precision of a scientist stating an observation. Have you learned from this mistake? Have you reformed your stagnant, fearful bureaucracy? Or have you simply continued to decay? When the gateway opens, we will have a choice. To offer you the hand of friendship we once begged for, or to simply close the door and leave you to your fate. We have prepared for both possibilities. He paused, letting the weight of his words cross the centuries. We have built a civilization capable of defending itself if you prove hostile. We have also built one capable of offering friendship if you prove worthy. The choice is now yours. Use the time you have left wisely. The recording ended. The great chamber of the galactic Concord was silent. The most powerful beings in the galaxy stared at the empty screen, the truth of their situation finally, crushingly clear. They had not lost a junior species. They had insulted a sleeping god. And the alarm clock was set to go off in 153 years. The debate that followed was unlike any in the Concord's history. There was no arrogance, no posturing, only a raw, desperate fear. What will they be like? One delegate whispered. After 1,000 years of advancement? What kind of power will they wield? They will be gods, another answered, his voice trembling. And we are the insects who once tried to step on them. High Emissary Lyra called for order. Her voice was no longer serene. It was urgent. We cannot waste a single moment. The debate is no longer about what we should have done. The debate is about what we must become. We have 153 years to prove that we are worthy of friendship. 153 years to reform a civilization that has not changed in millennia. The galaxy no longer felt infinite and safe. It felt small. It felt like a room with a clock on the wall, ticking down to a final, unavoidable judgment. The Concorde had arrived 847 years too late to answer a plea for help. Now, they had 153 years to prepare for a reckoning. The countdown had begun. What will they be like? One delegate whispered. After 1,000 years of advancement? What kind of power will they wield? They will be gods, another answered, his voice trembling. And we are the insects who once tried to step on them. High Emissary Lyra called for order. Her voice was no longer serene. It was urgent. We cannot waste a single moment. The debate is no longer about what we should have done. The debate is about what we must become. We have 153 years to prove that we are worthy of friendship. 153 years to reform a civilization that has not changed in millennia. The galaxy no longer felt infinite and safe. It felt small. It felt like a room with a clock on the wall, ticking down to a final, unavoidable judgment. The Concorde had arrived 847 years too late to answer a plea for help. Now, they had 153 years to prepare for a reckoning. The countdown had begun. What will they be like? One delegate whispered. After 1,000 years of advancement? What kind of power will they wield? They will be gods, another answered, his voice trembling. And we are the insects who once tried to step on them. High Emissary Lyra called for order. Her voice was no longer serene. It was urgent. We cannot waste a single moment. The debate is no longer about what we should have done. The debate is about what we must become. We have 153 years to prove that we are worthy of friendship. 153 years to reform a civilization that has not changed in millennia. The galaxy no longer felt infinite and safe. It felt small. It felt like a room with a clock on the wall, ticking down to a final, unavoidable judgment. The Concorde had arrived 847 years too late to answer a plea for help. Now, they had 153 years to prepare for a reckoning. The countdown had begun.